And debate. So, Jack, if you want to begin.
Yeah,
Thanks
thanks.
very much.
Thanks, Anne. Um, yeah, two subjects. I mean, of course, there's a huge amount happening, and I'm just going to comment on, first of all, Ukraine and associated issues, and then I'm going to turn to the Labour Party and, well, what is being called Corbyn's party project. Whether it's a party or not is an open question. And yeah, with that, I'll turn to Ukraine. I mean, I don't think anyone took Trump seriously when he talked about fixing the Ukraine war within 24 hours. I always took that as a metaphor myself, as code for I wouldn't have got into this mess. It's Joe Biden that's got us here. That's how I took it. Nor do I think he's got 100 days as well. I've sort of heard that float about. But there were and still are commentators, including for what passes for the left, that have talked about Trump in terms of appeasement, which, as you know, in terms of British history at least, is bad. Munich, 1938, Czechoslovakia, and all of that. But there's also, been a left that basically looks upon the present conflict as, mighty Russia, weak the United States, and therefore Trump's 24 hours talk about surrender, talk about Munich, sort of give it a positive spin. My own view is that both approaches are mistaken. Now, I last time I wrote on the Ukraine war was some time ago, and I have to say, my last article that I started to write about Ukraine, my notes on the war, I gave up. Not the article, but I gave up the title simply because I was concentrating so much on Trump. And I retitled the article. Instead of being notes on the war, I titled the article Notes on America. Now, if you look at Trump, he's put in place his chosen negotiators, his chosen representatives. These representatives, I think, without exception, have taken what you might call, certainly from a Democrat point of view, a skeptical attitude to the Ukraine war, i.e., Ukraine is a distant country of which we know little about, and perhaps care little about. We have had, though, reports of telephone negotiations between Trump and Putin. And according to the Trumpian narrative, they get on like a house on fire. They both have a natural rapport, so we are told. But afterwards, as soon as the phone is put down, Trump is complaining, and then the bastard gives the go-ahead for a drone, cruise missile, ballistic missile strike on this, that, or the other Ukrainian city. Which Trump purportedly says, well, that's just not on. That's just not the sort of agreement, or at least the indications in terms of our negotiations should have arrived at. So we've got to this situation of where Trump is now bad-mouthing Russia and Putin. It hasn't given up. So negotiations presumably have time to run. But what he's agreed, and I don't think there's any doubt about that, is to resume military deliveries. Now, were they ever stopped? I don't know. But Patriots, Patriot missiles, Patriot missile systems have been mentioned. And what Trump says, and I take this as accurate, is that these will be American arms, but paid for and supplied via, but at least paid for by various European powers. So my understanding is the next delivery of Patriot missiles to Ukraine is going to be paid for by Germany. Now, if you look at it from the Democrat point of view, from the liberal point of view, if this is Munich, if this is 1938, what the hell is going on? You know, Trump is giving everything that Putin asks, and yet insists on still carrying on with this war. What's it all about? It doesn't make sense, does it? Because Trump has turned around. My understanding is, you keep Crimea. You know, I don't know Trump's knowledge about history, but his advisors certainly have turned around, and Putin certainly has turned around. This was always Russian. They speak Russian. They feel Russian. They think of themselves as Russian. I'm sure Putin has made that point. Maybe he's referred to that thesis of his. Remember the essay that he wrote about Russian history and Ukraine not really existing? I'm sure. Remember the interview with Tucker Carlson, and bang on about it and giving him a lecture as if he was a schoolboy? I'm sure Putin has done that. And Trump seems to have turned around and said, okay, look, when it comes to negotiations, we can negotiate. But at the moment, I'm quite content that we have a deal. Russia keeps what it's won on the battlefield, right? We can negotiate about this or that. Okay, you keep that. We might negotiate more, we might negotiate less. But what I'll also guarantee is that no Ukrainian membership of NATO. Remember, this is what the liberals are up in arms about, and some on the left, the social imperialist left, on about. So what the hell is Putin doing? Every time he puts the phone down, with his negotiations with Trump, he gives the go-ahead to launch this wave of drones and ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, and upsets Trump. There he is fuming away, and he can't stop Putin in the way that clearly he could stop Netanyahu. Well, okay, what I'm going to argue is turn the mirror around, turn the question around, and don't look at it from the point of view of this being a rerun of World War II from the British stroke American mythological version of events. Turn it round and look at it from a Russian point of view. And what the Russian point of view will tell you is, okay, the breakup of the Soviet Union was a disaster. These are Putin's words. Remember him being a KGB operative in East Germany, GDR, and all the rest of it. This was the worst day, I suspect, of his life, as well as George Galloway. Soviet Union breaks up in spite of, popular votes when they had referendums to keep the union together in some form. And not only do you have an independent 14 different republics, but you have Ukraine. And what you have in Ukraine from 2014, I remember I'm looking at it from a Russian point of view, is you have a coup. There's no doubt about it. The elected president is overthrown in an operation. This wasn't, a parliamentary vote. This wasn't some, I don't know, the equivalent of the Supreme Court. This was carried out, by the Maidan coup makers. And from our understanding, the CIA was highly involved in financing, directing this particular operation. Once the operation is over, you get a new government in Kiev, and then you get these uprisings in the east. No surprising, because if you look at the Maidan coup, this is a Ukrainian chauvinist motivated coup. Look at the actors involved. Right sector, what is now the Azov brigade. Far right people with all sorts of strange runic symbols in terms of tattoos and the ideology that goes with it. I'm not accusing them of being Nazi, but I am saying fascist. I have no hesitation in saying that. Okay, from a Russian point of view, what else is going on? We have a new government. We have Zelensky coming in. We have talk about the EU. We have talk about NATO. Right. So from a Russian point of view, we see, I'm not going to go in about Gorbachev and GDR and Poland and how NATO wasn't going to expand. But here we are, we have NATO expansion, we have the EU expanding. And what you've got with Ukraine is next door, the near abroad, falling to an increasingly hostile US and increasingly hostile Western bloc. So, okay, you've carried out this brilliant military operation in Ukraine. I have to say that I didn't think it would happen. I do get things wrong. I always try to own up when I get things wrong. I'm not one of these people that say, oh, everything I've always said always comes right. No, plenty of times I've been wrong. Election of Trump, EU, Putin's, I call it Putin's invasion for shorthand, but Putin's invasion of Ukraine. I just looked at it and went, okay, this is what the CIA is saying in terms of the number of troops it's got massed on the border. And I was just going to myself, look, that isn't enough to overpower Ukraine. It's not that Ukraine is a top flight military power in its own right, but that isn't enough. That was my view, and therefore they're not going to do it. Well, they went ahead, they did it. We all know the result. They nearly got to Kiev. The aim presumably was to surround it, to take it, and then either you have a new government or you force the existing government to sue for peace, like the Georgia situation. But instead of that, what you have, because of Trump's administration won in part, but also I would argue because of the predictable Ukrainian, i.e. Ukrainian nationalist resistance. It was Stinger missiles and other such shoulder-launched missiles, plus Ukrainian nationalism stopped the Russian column, sent it back to Russia with its tail between its legs. And then we saw second phase, third phase of the war and all the rest of it. But the fact of the matter was that the war began, and Biden and the EU, Britain, armed Ukraine and basically shored it up. And what we had and what we've got is a war of attrition. A war that, in spite of the geography, hasn't seen, as we would have thought, before this war, I would have thought, perfect territory for tank fighting. This was the classic tank battles of, World War II, Kursk, huge numbers of tanks, rapid movement. Instead, much to my surprise, we've seen something like a reenactment of World War I on the Western front with the innovation of drones. Tanks They've gone, well, not quite the way of the cavalry, but anyone who talks about, Germany supplied all these Leopard tanks and America supplied these Abrams, and good old Britain's supplied Challenger to, I mean, my own response to it was to laugh. Because I can remember the Ukrainian offensive, the summer offensive, when they got all this new equipment. I'd seen the satellite pictures of Russian defenses. And the fact that they broke through anywhere surprised me. But the fact they didn't get to the Black Sea didn't surprise me. You had American, people overseeing this offensive. I don't know what they were on. Maybe it was all designed to show that they're putting this new equipment to use. Either way, it ground into the sand. Tanks were destroyed, armored cars were destroyed, Russian positions remained intact. So yes, World War One, but tanks going the way of the cavalry. So we have trenches, we have artillery, but as I said, with the innovation of drones. Anyway, back to the main point of this, what the hell is Putin doing? Okay, so I'm a Russian general. I'm advising my president, and I go to my president and say, President Vladimir, look, I've got this great idea. After we suppress Ukraine, after we get our victory in Ukraine, I've got this really great idea that we should invade Estonia, Latvia, and drive on into Poland and take the whole of Europe. Really great. Quite frankly, I'd be either shown the door or taken away to, a mental asylum. I mean, Russia hasn't done well, not only in the first phase of the war. We've had a war of attrition. And the fact of the matter is that because of Western supplies, but also, as I said, Ukrainian nationalism, the Russian army, to all intents and purposes, has been fighting a static war with minor advances, minor setbacks. I know we had the Russian reset, but that's basically the character of the war. But think about it from Putin's point of view. There you've got Trump offering you, according to the Biden camp, the traditional liberal camp in Europe, everything you wanted, all this territory, Crimea, no NATO membership for Ukraine, some sort of neutrality. What is there to object to? It'd be like Hitler turning down the Sudetenland. I mean, why would he turn down what he's been asked? Why I think is quite straightforward, and it is not only Finland and Sweden joining NATO. It's that part of this package is to have NATO, i.e. European troops, what's the word, as peacekeepers. That is the stumbling block. If you look at it from a Russian point of view, what this war has managed to achieve, if you had the Trump peace, is something like 1 million casualties, right? In terms of researchers, they've looked into this and said, well, maybe 116,000 dead. And they've researched it on the basis of young men dying, against the average trend in Russia. And you can see that from bequests, you can see that from funerals. That's the estimate. So 1 million people dead or injured, something like 100, 110, maybe 120,000 dead. What have we gained from that under this Trump deal? Well, we've gained what we already had, right, with these rebellions in the East, a bit more. But now we've got British, German, Polish, who knows what troops on our soft underbelly in Ukraine. Is that something that would go down well with Putin, or for that matter, Putin's rivals? Remember, your friends, people you're surrounded with often are going to also be your rivals. But is it going to go down well in what I'll call more scientifically the FSB regime in Russia, rather than just the Putin regime in Russia. And my argument would be no. This wouldn't be an advance for Russia. This would actually be a strategic setback for Russia. That's why Putin isn't playing Mr. Reasonable, why he isn't falling in line with the, the Neville Chamberlain in Washington, who isn't Neville Chamberlain. This is not an analogy. So I'm just using it to illustrate why Putin is supposedly being so awkward when he's being offered such a wonderful deal. No, if we look at it from Trump's point of view, what he's arguing for, I think, it's not clear, but I think you can make a reasonable case for it, is that what he wants to do isn't actually bring peace, but actually lock Europe and Russia either into a war that has a ceasefire, i.e. something like Korea, where officially North and South and all the rest of it is still, America's still at war, as far as I know, with North Korea. Well, not many shots have been fired, but something like that, which hugely fortified, heavily manned. Meanwhile, it's Europe that pays for all of this, and we've had the pledges. Remember, Trump, takes off in Air Force One, issues instructions to Netanyahu to stop it. That's the polite version of the message, but then lands in The Hague, I think it was, and gets his fawning reception, but also what he's been on about and what previous American presidents have been on about. Europe needs to stump up, and we get this this stuff about Europe freeloading. Really, what that is about, at least in terms of my version of it, i.e. my notes on America, is America getting more tribute from Europe. Something Trotsky was going on about in the aftermath of World War One. America didn't do it in terms of it sort of was on the winning side, but didn't do down the British Empire. That had to wait until World War II and American hegemony being asserted. And then, of course, what we had is the Cold War and America sponsoring the post-World War II settlement, backing social democratic parties, backing the labor right, and delivering. It wasn't just a myth, but delivering to sections of the Western working class. America was booming. America could afford that. Now we've got America in visible relative decline, and now it's coming for its tribute, and its tribute will be in the forms of arms purchases, but also trade deals that are more general. I mean, Britain's going, we only got 10% tariffs. So we've got a situation where America is getting its trade deals through that benefit its trade at the detriment of its partners and friends, let alone opponents. And we've also got Europe and others committed to purchasing American hardware. Now, there is a French argument. We should make sure it's French or European, but no, you ain't going to get Patriot missiles from anywhere else other than America. That's my understanding. When it comes to Britain purchasing its latest round of F-35s, fifth generation fighter aircraft, and equipping them with nuclear weapons, where are the nuclear weapons going to come? Who has the finger on the use of these weapons? Well, there'll be an American finger there as well as a Brit finger. These are not independent weapons, but they are paid for from Britain. This is the point. So let's just look at a bit more. So we seem to have, I mean, again, this is sort of work in progress. We seem to have some realignment, at least by commentators, So I was reading Edward Luce of the FT, who's looking at Trump and saying, oh, he's done a 180-degree turn because he's gone from talking peace in Ukraine to now talking about war. All I can say, Edward, I was reading, I mean, you reading Trump much more closely than I have been doing, but I read Trump during the election, and Trump said, peace, yes, I will bring peace. But he also said, read his speeches, read them. He also said, if we don't get peace, then I'm going to bring war. I talked about Trump talking peace, but carrying a big club. So here we've got the big club. Now, how big, we don't know. Is it going to be Patriot missiles and that's it? What else is going to come? Is it going to be more artillery shells made in America? I would expect so. What else is going to be purchased, paid for by the Europeans and supplied to the Ukrainians? I don't see in the words myself, this is Condoleezza Rice, again quoted in the FT. She's been speaking at some high-powered conference in America. She's been talking about Trump in terms of Ukraine undergoing a quote-unquote turning point. In other words, they're portraying Trump as coming over to their bellicose point of view. I don't buy that story. To me, as I said, Trump talked about peace and would have done a deal, but the deal I've described that would give Russia something, but would lock Europe into a permanent conflict with Russia, be a permanent threat to Russia, because this wouldn't be a neutral Ukraine. It will be a neutral Ukraine guaranteed by tens and tens of thousands of NATO, i.e. European NATO soldiers paid for by Europe. So I can see what they're on about, but nonetheless, I think that this shows more about them than it does actually about Trump. And then again, let's have a think about. I mean, I don't take, just to make the point, I don't take Trump as an idiot. I've read lots of what I would call idiots on the left talking about Trump being an idiot. Trump, I'm sure, isn't the greatest bookworm on the planet. My understanding is that he's a mercurial personality, looks at a lot of TV, is impressionistic, but I don't write him off as some blithering idiot. I think he's got an idea, and I think it is about reversing America's relative decline. And I think he's got clear sight that it's not Russia that's the main enemy of the United States. It's not the Soviet Union. Anyway, it's China, isn't it? We all know it's China. China's the number 2 economy. And if anyone is challenging for global hegemony, well, it's not Russia, which has got a big oil industry and a big arms industry, but not much else. It's China that represents, in terms of potential, a full spectrum challenge to the United States. Now, it's got a long way to go. You could argue about a decade, 2 decades, whatever you want to argue. But surely the aim of the United States is to head it off early. Don't wait for it to surpass you. Kick it while it's on its way up. Finish it now or in a few years' time. Don't wait till it's too big. I mean, that seems to me to be what's going on. So, okay, you extract more tribute from Europe. You lock Europe into the Ukraine conflict. The United States takes a step back, not into isolation. This is again rerunning past history without understanding present history. No, it carries on what you had under Obama, the pivot to Asia. Remember with Hillary Clinton, remember her speech? She was Secretary of State, and she talked about the rise of China blocking the right. She talked about peaceful competition, but the reality was the United States, main focus was going to shift to the Pacific and opposing China. And so what we've got is a situation that US representatives are going around not only Asia, countries like South Korea, Japan, but also Australia, and say, well, what would you do? And we don't just mean some casual condemnation. What would you do if China invaded Taiwan? And what they're asking for it isn't just, as I said, some diplomat, oh, we'd vote against it at the UN General Council, shrug of shoulders. No, what they want is higher arms spending, again on the pattern that I've described in Europe, more tribute going to the United States, but also in that sense, locking in these countries into what isn't simply going to be a Chinese invasion, but could easily be a US provocation against China of one sort or the other. That I'm just not going to go there and make a prediction, but clearly we're living in conditions, both from China's point of view and the US point of view, of the cusp of a major armed conflict between the United States and China. And what the United States under Trump is doing is sorting out the world in preparation for such a conflict. Now, there's been a lot of, I think, idle talk, that's my own assessment, of sanctions. Well, you could go in for what they call secondary sanctions, not impossible. But remember what we're talking about. We're talking about the United States sanctioning India. We're talking about the United States sanctioning, blockading maybe, if they don't comply. Obviously, it's not going to be by sea with Russia, but some sort of sanctions move against China, because we're talking about secondary sanctions. Will India fall in place? What about Iran? Will they fall, into line? Now, we don't know these things, but clearly the aim is to up the ante. But I'm skeptical, as I said, about talk of secondary sanctions or increased sanctions bringing Russia to its knees. I mean, so just a quick tour of the Russian economy. Inflation up, no surprise. The economy is booming with war production, so that's not a surprise. Interest rates at 20%, very, very high. 6.3, this is an estimate, you can believe it if you want, 6.3 of GDP spent on weapons. Interestingly, with the prediction that next year and the year after it goes down. Russia has got lots of reserves, but they're going down. Okay, so the way I read it, what you've got with Putin, what you've got with the FSB regime in Moscow is we're going to string this war out. We're not going to win it. We're not going to roll in to Kiev. That was a possibility in my view, and it could still happen if the morale of Ukrainian troops collapses. And I thought that was possible with talk of Trump cutting off arms supplies and all the rest of it. It hasn't happened. I don't know what the morale of Ukrainian troops are as opposed to refuseniks. We don't have reporters. We don't have honest news. But it wouldn't surprise me. But we should also think about the morale of Russian troops. Is their morale, soaring high when they're used, as human fodder for this war? I'm skeptical. My hope would be fraternization. My hope would be that the left, does its job and revives and gets its act together. Either way, my fear is that this war will drag on in one form or the other. And it seems to me that America is planning for that, with Europe paying for it, with Europe locked into that. And it seems to me also that the FSB regime in Moscow is also planning for that. Something not to the liking of China, which presumably would want Russia, more actively on its side. Either way, that's how things at least appear to me. Now, again, just a few statistics. This is meant to be proof of Russian, military prowess. in May, it won't mean much to you. It didn't mean much to me because I don't know what it looks like. Russia gained 173 square miles of territory in Ukraine. In June, it gained 214 square miles. Now, really, if you look at it on the map, and you look at you color the gains in, this is a shading that on a slightly smaller scale map you would hardly notice. It's a pencil, line on a larger scale map. It's only when you get down there and you're looking at a village or a river or a hill that you would actually really notice it. And as one wag who presumably interested in statistics has said, okay, that means 0.1% of Ukrainian territory lost every month. Okay, now I can't verify these figures, but this wag just made the point, well, at the present rate of advance, it will take, tongue-in-cheek, several years for Russia to get the oblasts that it's already annexed actually under Russian hands. Now, wars don't work like that. Wars don't work on the basis of just incremental advances. At some point, there are crashes. At some point, you grind to a halt. You have to judge these things at a higher level of politics. It is not going to carry on that way. But okay, say it does for the next year, the next 2 years, the next 3 years. So what? More dead, more widows, more young men maimed, sure. More money in US coffers, sure. More arms companies with their share prices going up. More people, who are members of Unite or GMB, sure. But that's nothing to celebrate, in my view. Okay. I think I've covered Ukraine for the moment. I will be, I'm sort of basically, the reason I delivered on Ukraine is one, because of the Patriots, talk of Trump's turn, but also I think things are starting to happen that require a commentary. So I'll be very interested to see what comrades on this call have to say about that assessment. It's very provisional. I'm not saying this is what I believe or anything like that. It's my assessment as things stand at the moment. And we had a discussion on the PCC, and I think there was a sort of, perhaps, we don't know. And we can't know, because a lot of this stuff is still unknowable at the moment. Okay, turning to the Labour Party, more speculation here. But what we do know is Diane Abbott has been suspended again. And remember, with Diane Abbott, she was going to run as an independent. That was her threat just in the run-up to the last general election. And it was Starmer that blinked. Remember? Wasn't she going to join Jeremy Corbyn in running as an independent? Would she win? Would Jeremy win? I don't know. I mean, I do visit Diane's constituency regularly. I mix with her Hackney constituents. I have got no ability to judge whether she's hugely popular or hugely unpopular, but I would say she would have been in with a chance. That's all I can say, as I thought Jeremy Corbyn was in with a chance, just by anecdotal evidence, no more. Okay, but anyway, it was Starmer that blinked. She was let back in. And what did she say on some BBC interview? I haven't bothered watching it. Oh, I have no regrets in terms of what I said. What did she say in this? Was it a letter or was it an article? I can't remember. To the Observer. From my memory, it went along the lines of redheads and Jewish people and travellers and Irish people not facing the sort of levels of discrimination as black people in Britain. Today, I think that's unarguable. I mean, I do remember as a kid no blacks, no Irish, no dogs on pubs in my area. I remember that distinctly. Now I couldn't imagine such a. I mean, I was sitting in a pub and some twat started going on about travelers, and I was sort of like, what the fuck is this? So travelers are clearly objects of discrimination, and I know that. But again, you don't. I mean, what her point was, when you're going down the street, so if I'm walking down the street of Hackney, I don't know whether someone's Irish. I don't know whether, I mean, unless someone's in the full get up, an ultra Orthodox person, like in the north of Hackney, I can spot a Jewish person because they announce themselves as Jewish. But normally, I mean, for example, someone pointed out to me that, is it Mike or is it Peter Preston? I can't remember, but the ex-BBC guy that's now for ITV, apparently he's Jewish. I wouldn't have known. So he has to point it out. I'm Jewish, by the way. You have that, don't you? I mean, Graham Bash. I never knew he was Jewish until it became politically significant. I wouldn't have known Jackie Walker was Jewish until it became politically significant. I'm Jewish, I'm black. I mean, like, well, I can tell you've got dark skin and maybe you've got West Indian parents or something. Wouldn't have known anything. Anyway, the point I'm making is that's undoubtedly true. And as Kemi Badenoch has pointed out, as a kid, Diane Abbott would have been called nigger, just as people, would have been called an Paki, right? So yeah, in football games, apparently in Tottenham, I'm talking about Tottenham Hotspur, the fans of Tottenham talk about yids, but as an assertive slogan. Now, I'm sure there are fringe elements that go around talking about yids, but what we've had is a right wing, an ultra right fascist in Britain now embrace Israel. So when you were on the demonstration yesterday, you have a demonstration by the Zionists along with their far right allies and friends, the Tommy Robinsons of this world, who don't go on about yids in a derogatory sense, death to the Jews, it's death to the Arabs, death to the Muslims, that they unitedly go on about. So she had a valid point, but she just put it in a clumsy way. And remember, she blamed a subordinate for this letter and said, oh, it was sent out by mistake. Now, I don't know whether to believe it or not. I'm a generous person. And I also have listened to Diane Abbott when she was, remember, Shadow Home Secretary in the House of Commons, and just gone, Diane, what are you on? And apparently it's because of her diabetes and it's a blood sugar level. So, she comes out with her own, this is her own account of it, with nonsense sometimes. She says she needs to keep, insulin up, and I believe her. Either way, the significance here isn't Diane Abbott repeating, I got no regrets, because you've got to go into her head what she mean by that. She means that, what I've just explained. That's what she means. She's got no regrets. If you're a black kid in Hackney, chances are the police will stop and search you. You can see them. I come out of Kingsland High Road Overground, and you see armed police, let alone police. And who do they search? They don't search old gits like me. They search young black men. And if you happen to be, driving a BMW and you happen to be black, the chances are, good chance, in London, you're going to be stopped because you're a drug dealer. You're a successful drug dealer. Why? How on earth did a black guy get a BMW? Through any other channel than drugs, he'll have them on him, right? If I was driving a BMW, no one would stop me, except my driving would be appalling. They'd stop me for either speeding or running over someone or something like that. But no, the point is serious, isn't it? Right? So it's real what she's saying. But therefore, I'm not going to talk about that. What I want to talk about is why did Starmer, again, someone I'm taking not as an idiot, by the way, get a lot of people, oh, he's an idiot. He can't remember all the stuff about Starmer when he won the leadership and the Labour Party wasn't riding high in the polls. He's an idiot and he's got to go because he can't possibly win a general election. Then he wins a general election and some section to the left say, oh, if only he was, if only the Labour Party was led by someone sensible, everything would be lovely. No, He's sensible. He's got a plan. He knows, I think, what he's doing to some degree. Okay, he had this stupid speech put in front of him, Island of Strangers. I do think that was a stupid speech. And the fact that he delivered it does say something to undermine my thesis. Nonetheless, I'm going to insist that he has some plan. He has some vision. And I think what it is, at least that's how I put the pieces together. I think it's got something to do with this guy in terms of who's got the publicity for it, maybe get the sack for it, Morgan McSweeney. And the idea, talk down the Tories, ignore the Tories, talk up reform. Let's have the next general election fought as the Labour Party versus reform. Remember, crypto-fascists, near-fascists, crazy people. And the left, the Liberals will all flock to the Labour camp because visibly Labour is the lesser of two evils. Evil, but less evil than Nigel Farage and his crazy front bench, let alone, the shadow ministers that Nigel will have and his friend Elon Musk, or is he a friend anymore? You get the point. Why do I argue that with Diane Abbott? Well, one, they suspended her, but they didn't just suspend her, did they? They also came on with suspending 4 rebels, welfare rebels. I won't bother with their names. These are knobheads, according to one source. This is a Labour source, by the way, not me. Knobheads, these people are. But why? You ask the question, you know the answer. Why didn't they suspend the 120 Labour MPs who are threatening to rebel? The 120 that were responsible collectively for gutting this nasty, vindictive, shitty piece of legislation that would have targeted some of the most vulnerable people in Britain in order for Rachel Reeves to balance her book and please the city and international investors. Why didn't they? Well, you asked the question, there you are, that's your answer, because there would be 120 of them. So instead you punish a handful. But nonetheless, they could have just ignored it, and they could have come out, which is what you would expect if they wanted a rapprochement. What do you come out? I could write the speech. We're recalibrating, we're rethinking, we're a listening government. We're not authoritarians. When there's a problem, we fix it. When facts change, we've heard the evidence about these poor people suffering, and therefore we've decided to ditch this legislation. Some bullshit like that, you might turn around and say it's bullshit, but it gives you cover, right, to keep the party united. I'm part of your consensus. And again, another trite remark. The Labour Party, is like a bird. It needs 2 wings to fly. It needs a right, that's a sensible wing. It needs a left to dream, but together we're strong. Some other bullshit like that. Keir Starmer, if he's given the Island of Strangers speech to read out, is quite capable of coming out with the left and right and Party United and some other rubbish along those lines. And not only did they suspend 4 MPs, the whip was taken away, they actually sacked 3 trade envoys. Now, I must admit, I hadn't really heard of trade envoys. I sort of had a good idea what they must be. People on the receipt of government crumbs, the gravy train. I was told that this had nothing to do with overseas trade. I just went, what? So what this is about is apparently promoting widgets to Middlesbrough. Is that really going to be a government job? No. I'll just pick out one of the 3. Bell Rubino Addy. Remember the sidekick to Diane Abbott? Left wing, member of the Socialist Campaign Group. She got a job. She got a job from Sir Keir. Not selling widgets to Middlesbrough, but selling something to Ghana. Now, maybe she's got some family connections there, but I don't think that's to do with family connections. I think this is the first step on furthering your career with Sir Keir. And 3 of them been given the sack. Just looking at the one that didn't get the sack, I don't know whether that's because she didn't rebel, Kate Osmond. left wing. I presume she's still in the Socialist Campaign Group. What's she doing in the Socialist Campaign Group? Taking Sir Keir's money. Campaign Group, I think, if I'm right, was established under Blair. I'm not sure, but correct me. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong. And one of the rules they passed, clearly unenforceable when Jeremy Corbyn became leader, no government posts, no shadow posts. Now that seems to have gone. It was bound to have gone under Corbyn. But what's she doing, taking government money? Anyway, my main point here is that if we look at Starmer, my version of it is he's quite prepared to see a Corbyn party. And maybe he loses Islington North again. Maybe he loses Diane Abbott's Hackney seat. Maybe she decides to stand as an independent. Maybe one or two others. I don't know. I don't know what the number crunching. I don't know what the estimate would be. Either way, I think the idea is that they can play it big time and they can take a loss to their left. And quite frankly, these breakaways, and anyone who knows anything about history, first past the post system, knows that they don't last very long. So I'm thinking back in terms of history, I'm thinking the ILP. Now, what I would emphasize about the ILP is this wasn't some little breakaway with one or two MPs. The ILP existed before the Labour Party. This was a membership organization that Frederick Engels rated over and above the Social Democratic Federation. This was something with roots in the working class, with its own ideology, with its own party culture. It wasn't a fringe group, it was a component part of the Labour Party. So the original Labour Party, I think, was going to have an executive with trade union representatives, but also representatives for the socialist societies. The ILP would have been given 2. SDF would have been given 2, and the Fabians were going to be given 1. The SDF walked, ILP remained. But also it had as members people like Ramsay MacDonald, the Prime Minister, the leader of the Labour Party. Anyway, my point would be that with the Ramsay MacDonald second government, with Ramsay MacDonald going off to form the national government with the Tories in effect, the ILP broke away against the advice of the Communist Party, that's my understanding, stood independently. And the last time it was ever heard of, I think, and again, I could be wrong, comrades who know more about it than me, I think it was 45. Maybe they got an MP or 2, or maybe they got nothing. I don't know. Either way, last time I heard of it, it had changed its name. And I think that would have been in the 60s. But again, this is just from memory. I think it changed its name from ILP, Independent Labour Party, to Independent Labour Publications. In other words, it had disappeared. The Communist Party took its tranche. Trotskyists took this bit and that. Most went back to Labour. A lot of them didn't go to Labour. The Socialist League was the minority in the ILP that didn't go. But either way, you look at right wing, what happened to MacDonald's party? Nothing. I think, again, it survived under his son for a little while. So 45, maybe it still existed. Then Social Democratic Party, Owen and Jenkins and all that lot. Okay, they end up in disappear. Socialist Labour Party, Arthur Scargill, well, it still exists, but hey. So these things don't tend to last. And again, I've been told, well, sometimes things come out of nothing. And the examples I've been given from Europe, PR, make a slight difference, it's Podemos and Syriza. I just have to say, when I told comrades on the PCC this, at least Mike, who knows his British history, was head in hands going, oh my God, no, surely not. No, because Syriza is or was the core, the spinal cord of Syriza was the KKE, Communist Party of Greece, the Euro-Communist, Communist Party of the Interior. This is the party that fought a civil war against the fascist right, against British forces, right? This is the historic party of the militant working class in Greece. It's not a get together like, Jeremy Corbyn's independence in the House of Commons, which are more accident. There's no design there. What about Podemos, Communist Party of Spain? These people come from the Communist Party of Spain, the Young Communist League. What's his name? Who's the leader? You're not going to help me, I know, but of Syriza, Cyprus, Young Communist League. Yeah. These people know each other. They've got a party culture. It's a horrible Euro-communist culture. It's full of class compromise. I accept it. But it's not an ephemeral organization. And if you look at Corbyn's, is it going to be a party? We don't know. The one thing I do know is that you've got various comrades on the left. We'll call one of them Ed, maybe another one of them Max. They're all, they're all building their castles in the sky. And so it's like, I always had it at school, right? All you lot, because we've got summer holidays. You're going away on your summer holidays now, children. And I want you to write an essay. And what you want you to write on, because I know you're interested, it's Jack Conrad guy, you're interested in politics. Write about the party you'd love to see in your imagination. And I'd come back to school in September and here's my essay. And the teacher would look at it and go, oh, that's really good. So you're going to have a party of revolutionaries and reformists, and they're all going to get on because you're going to build this party from below. And there's going to be democracy. There's going to be openness. No one's going to be scoring cheap points against anyone else. No rude words will be spread around. You'll all respect each other in this new party. There would be a rotating leadership. There'll be no, leadership cult in this party. But if I was a Marxist teacher as opposed to a nice, generous school teacher, I'd say, bad thing, Jack. You're just making this up. This is equivalent, of what Marx criticized as a utopia, that everyone will wear blue, everyone will be equal, everyone will get their fair share. Men and women will all get on, and because I've decreed it. And you cannot decree a party that's built in secret, a party that's built around Jeremy Corbyn, a leader who turns around and there's a vote. Okay, I'm not saying it's a democratic vote, but a 20-10 vote that there'll be a joint leadership and says, hey, that's a bit premature. That's not going to turn into the party that you imagine. Your imaginary party will not see the light of day. And just finish with this. If we actually look at the history of the Labour Party is ruled to stop the communists taking over, and then the Trots taking over by purging the party, or by creating rules, prescribed lists, barring individual communists. There's Militant, that's now a prescribed organization. The AWL of all organization is Labour Party Marxists, they prescribe you. Or if there's a democratic vote and they lose, they walk. Right. So in France, the majority of delegates of the French Socialist Party, the official section of the socialists, they voted to affiliate to the Third International. Did the right respect that vote? No, they walked. We have the same in Italy. We have the same in Germany. So the Independent Social Democratic Party, remember, a mass party of 600,000 people. Remember Ben's lovely translation of Zinoviev's speech of the century. So they won the majority at the Halle Congress. What did the right do? Say, oh, that's fair enough. We're going to affiliate to the Third International. That's okay. We'll be a loyal opposition. No, they walked. And that's the reality. So either they win, that's fine. But if you win, you lose. They walk. And of course, with that, respectability goes with it. And again, I'm not saying he's a fool, but again, wishful thinking. And I never thought he would do it. We've all just taken note of the Unite Policy Conference, and Sharon Graham either kicking out or she'd already walked, Angela Rayner, Birmingham councillors, and talking about the 1.5 million chicken feed, by the way, Labour affiliation fee and all the rest of it. And therefore you've got, again, in the imagination, the left is saying, oh, our time is going to come we're going to get Unite breaking from Labour, coming over to Jeremy's party, and it will not only be unity of reformists, and we'll have the biggest donor, trade union donor to the Labour Party on board. Well, maybe you will, but I doubt it. Sharon Graham is not a syndicalist. She's a business union leader. That's why she's threatening Labour. She wants to do a business deal. And if she did go with Corbyn's party, what then happens to Corbyn's no nuclear weapons principle? What happens to the principle of the left? I call it a principle. No nuclear power, because it's a prelude to nuclear weapons. What happens, to arms manufacturing and 5% or 3.5% of GDP to arms that give Unite members these nice jobs in BAC and Lockheed Martin? What does Sharon Graham say about that then? I think she would have something to say about it. But then I was reading Socialist Worker, and of all people, Alex Kalinikos. And what did he say? He's looking at Sharon Graham, he's looking at this party on the left. And what's he say? He says, we better get our act together because Sharon Graham's move makes it all the more urgent. In other words, he's looking forward to Sharon Graham coming to his rescue. Dream on, Alex. And again, just to finish with this, of course, the party that the SWP, the party that Alex Kalinikos envisages, isn't a party. It's some sort of umbrella where the SWP continues to operate, does its own. Maybe that's what happens. Again, we don't know. All I do know is that those that are, creating their utopias will be disappointed. So maybe we're not dealing with a party, we'd be dealing with a loose electoral front. And again, look at Socialist Worker this week, generous interview with Polanski, the putative, he's deputy leader at the moment of the Green Party, wants to become leader. Lots of nice questions for him to answer, including the importance of electoral struggles, as well as the streets, as well as strikes. He's saying, in other words, come into the Green Party and vote for me. That's the role of Socialist Workers. So the Socialist Workers Party is acting as a recruiting sergeant for the Greens. Just amazing stuff. And maybe this is a prelude to realization of Alex Kalinikos' dream of bringing the Green Party into under Corbyn's umbrella. It won't happen, I promise you, even with Polanski, if he was elected.